I should have known the moment I said his name that the lie would become the most dangerous truth of my life. The engagement hall was too bright, too white, too perfect, like someone had built a wedding out of snow and silence. Crystal chandeliers hung above my head, throwing cold light over rows of wealthy guests, silver forks, untouched champagne, and flowers so pale they looked more like funeral lilies than decorations. I stood in the center of it all in a tailored cream suit my mother had chosen, my hands folded neatly, because that was what Bennett Omegas were taught to do. Smile softly. Speak gently. Accept what your family calls a blessing, even when it feels like a cage closing around your ribs. Across from me, Derek Walsh smiled like he had already won. He was 32, polished, powerful, the kind of alpha my parents described as stable, respectable, and impossible to refuse. His family owned half the medical buildings downtown. His name opened doors, and his voice made every adult in the room nod before he finished speaking. Mine did not. I was 24, an Omega with a college degree, a part-time design job, and a family that still treated my future like a business arrangement. My father lifted his glass and announced, with that calm public voice he used when he wanted obedience to sound elegant, that the Bennett and Walsh families were honored to celebrate a union built on trust. Trust. The word almost made me laugh. Derek reached for my hand, and every camera phone in the room rose like a wall of tiny glowing eyes. I looked at his fingers hovering over mine, then at my mother, who gave me the smallest warning smile. Be good, Noah. Do not embarrass us. But something inside me, something tired and cornered and finally alive, refused. I stepped back. The room froze so completely I could hear the soft buzz of the chandelier above me. My father's smile tightened. Derek's hand remained in the air. Noah, my mother whispered, barely moving her lips. I swallowed, my throat dry, my pulse racing so fast it felt louder than the string quartet in the balcony. I can't do this, I said. My voice was small at first, but it carried. I can't marry him. Hey. Few guests gasped. Someone dropped a spoon. Derek's smile faded by one careful inch. And why is that? He asked, still polite, still certain. I looked at the doors, at the flowers, at every exit I was too afraid to run toward. Then I heard myself say the words that changed everything. Because I already have an alpha. Silence fell like glass. My father's face drained of color. Who? He demanded. My mind went blank, except for one person. The one person who always answered. The one person I trusted more than my own heartbeat. Ethan Parker, I whispered. Then louder, because terror had already pushed me past the point of return. My alpha is Ethan Parker. For one impossible second, nobody moved, and I almost believed I had stopped time by saying his name. Then the room woke up all at once. My mother inhaled sharply. My father set down his champagne glass with careful precision, the kind of calm that meant I had crossed a line he would not forgive in public. Derek Walsh looked at me as if I had stepped out of the role he had purchased and become something inconveniently human. Call him, my father said. 2 words, quiet enough for only the nearest tables to hear, but they landed heavier than a shout. My fingers shook as I pulled my phone from my pocket. Ethan was saved under one word, home. I hated how much that hurt in that moment. I typed before I could lose my nerve. Please come to the Grand Meridian. I need you. I said you were my alpha. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen, my heart beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Then I sent it. For 12 minutes, I stood under the chandeliers while my future balanced on a lie and a loading icon. Derek used those minutes well. He smiled again, smoother this time, and stepped close enough that the cameras would think he was comforting me. Noah, he said softly, there is no need to make this embarrassing. Fear makes people say strange things. I wanted to answer, but my voice had folded in on itself. My father moved to my side and murmured, if this is a childish stunt, end it now. I looked toward the tall double doors at the back of the hall. Nothing. Just white flowers, gold handles, and the reflection of a terrified Omega in the polished marble floor. Then my phone buzzed once. I looked down. Ethan had sent only 3 words. I am here. The doors opened before I could breathe. Every head turned. Ethan Parker walked into the engagement hall wearing a black suit and no expression at all, his dark blonde hair slightly windblown, as if he had crossed half the city without caring who saw him run. He was 25, 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered in the quiet way of someone who never needed to prove his strength. I had seen him in old hoodies, college sweatshirts, rain-soaked jackets, and wrinkled work shirts after long shifts at his architecture firm. I had never seen him look like this. He looked like an alpha stepping into a room that had forgotten who it belonged to. He did not look at Derek first. He did not look at my parents. His eyes found mine, warm brown and steady, and something in my chest nearly broke from relief. Ethan crossed the room in silence. When he reached me, he took off his suit jacket and placed it over my shoulders, shielding me from the cold air and every hungry stare. His hand settled lightly at my waist, respectful enough for the room, familiar enough to make my knees feel unsteady. Then he turned to my family with a calm I knew he had built out of anger. "Sorry I am late," he said. "My Omega was waiting for me." The words were supposed to be a performance. That was all this could be. But his voice did not shake, his hand did not hesitate, and the clean cedar warmth of his scent wrapped around me like a promise he had been holding back for years. I looked up at my best friend, the boy who had carried my boxes into my first apartment, the man who remembered how I took my coffee, the only alpha who had never made me feel small, and for the first time that night, I was not afraid of Derek Walsh. I was afraid of how real Ethan sounded when he lied. The moment Ethan called me his Omega, the engagement hall shifted around us like a stage after the wrong actor walks in and somehow owns the scene. My father recovered first, because men like him treated surprise as a private weakness. "Ethan Parker," he said, each syllable polished with disapproval. "This is unexpected." Ethan did not remove his hand from my waist. It was not meant to be a public announcement tonight. The answer was smooth, almost effortless, and that scared me more than any hesitation would have. Derek's eyes moved from Ethan's hand to the jacket over my shoulders, then to my face. He looked amused now, but not convinced. "How touching," he said. "A hidden romance. How long have you two been together?" My mind went white. I opened my mouth, but Ethan answered before panic could betray me. "Long enough to know Noah hates being cornered." The room went still again, softer this time, as if everyone had heard the warning beneath the politeness. My mother stepped forward quickly, wearing the smile she used to cover family fractures. "Perhaps we should all continue this conversation somewhere private." That was how Ethan and I ended up in a small side lounge behind the ballroom, with cream walls, a marble fireplace, and a locked silence pressing between us. My parents waited outside with Derek, claiming they wanted to give us a moment to gather ourselves. The second the door closed, I slipped out from under Ethan's jacket and turned on him. "I am sorry," I whispered. I know this is insane." I panicked. Ethan looked at me for a long second, then picked up his jacket from where it had fallen over the back of a chair and folded it with ridiculous care. "Are you okay?" I almost laughed because that was so Ethan it hurt. Not "Why did you drag me into this?" Not "What were you thinking?" Not "Do you understand what you have done?" Just, "Are you okay?" "No," I admitted. "But I will be, if we can get through tonight." His jaw tightened. "What exactly did you tell them?" "Only that you are my alpha." His eyes flickered, but his voice stayed calm. "Only." Heat rushed to my face. "Do not say it like that." "Like what?" "Like it means something." Ethan looked away first, and the movement felt like a door closing. I grabbed a cocktail napkin from the side table and found a pen near the guest book. "We need rules." His eyebrows lifted. "Rules?" "Yes. If we are doing this, we are doing it properly. Fake relationship rules." I flattened the napkin on the table and wrote as neatly as my shaking hand allowed. Rule 1, no unnecessary touching. Rule 2, no private lies that make this confusing. Rule 3, no jealousy. Rule 4, no scent marking. Rule 5, no falling in love because of temporary emotional pressure. Ethan stood beside me, close enough that I could feel the steady warmth of him, but not close enough to touch. When I handed him the pen, his expression changed at the last rule. It was only for a second, a shadow passing across his face, but I saw it. "Something wrong?" I asked. "No," he signed his name beneath mine in clean, sharp letters. Then, without asking, he turned the napkin slightly and wrote one more line at the bottom. "Unless you ask me to stop pretending." My breath caught. "Ethan." Before he could answer, the door opened. My mother stood there with her perfect smile and frightened eyes. "Your father has decided," she said. "Ethan will stay at the house this weekend. If this relationship is real, there should be no problem proving it." The room tilted beneath me. Ethan picked up the napkin contract, folded it once, and slipped it into his jacket pocket like it mattered. Then he looked at me, calm as ever, and said, "No problem at all." The ride to my parents' estate took 40 minutes, but it felt longer than every year Ethan and I had spent pretending our friendship was simple. My mother insisted we arrive in the same car, because appearances, according to her, required consistency. So I sat beside Ethan in the back of my father's black town car while the city lights slid across the window like pale ribbons, and neither of us spoke. His jacket was back around my shoulders. I had tried to return it twice, but he only said I looked cold, and somehow that ended the argument. Outside, late November rain tapped softly against the glass. Inside, the air was warm, quiet, and filled with cedar. Ethan's scent had always been familiar to me, like clean wood, winter air, and the old Parker house where I had spent half my teenage years hiding from my own. Tonight, it felt different. He was holding it back, I could tell, keeping every alpha instinct folded neatly behind his calm expression. That should have comforted me. Instead, it made my chest ache. When we reached the Bennett estate, the front doors were already open, spilling golden light across the wet driveway. The house looked exactly as it always had: white columns, trimmed hedges, stone steps, and windows glowing like watchful eyes. My childhood had lived behind those windows, perfectly dressed and perfectly supervised. Ethan stepped out first, then offered me his hand. I almost refused because of Rule 1, but my mother was watching from the doorway, so I placed my fingers in his. His palm was warm. His thumb brushed once over my knuckles, so gently that no one else could have noticed. I noticed. Of course I noticed. Upstairs, a housekeeper led us to the east guest wing, where my mother had prepared what she called the couple's suite. The words made my stomach drop before the door even opened. Inside was a fireplace, 2 armchairs, fresh towels, a silver tray with tea, and one enormous bed covered in white linen. One bed. Ethan stopped behind me. I heard his breath change, just slightly. "There has been a mistake," I said quickly. The housekeeper smiled with the professional blankness of someone paid not to hear discomfort. Mrs. Bennett said this was the appropriate room. Then she left, closing the door with a soft click that sounded too final. For a moment, I stared at the bed as if it had personally betrayed me. Ethan walked to the far side of the room and loosened his tie. "I will take the floor. Do not be ridiculous." "Noah." He said my name gently, but it carried weight. "We wrote rules." I turned away because my face felt hot. I know what we wrote. My overnight bag sat near the dresser, packed by my mother's assistant, not me. I searched through it with shaking hands until I found the small white bottle of suppressants I kept for emergencies. My stress had made my body restless, my scent too bright, too easy to read. I took one pill with a glass of water and avoided Ethan's eyes. "It is just precaution," I said. He did not move closer. He did not ask anything embarrassing. He only lowered himself onto the rug beside the fireplace, still in his dress shirt, and placed a folded blanket beneath his head. The sight of him there, choosing discomfort to protect a line I had drawn in panic, hurt more than if he had teased me. I climbed into the bed and turned off the lamp. Darkness softened the room. Rain whispered against the windows. For a long time, I listened to Ethan breathing on the floor, steady and controlled, while my own heart refused to settle. "Ethan," I whispered. "Yes. Thank you for coming." A pause. Then his voice came through the dark, low and tired. "I have always come when you needed me." I closed my eyes, but sleep did not find me. Because the worst part was not the one bed, or the lie, or the weekend ahead. The worst part was realizing that Ethan Parker sounded less like a man helping his best friend and more like a man finally standing exactly where he had wanted to be all along. By Saturday evening, I had learned that pretending in private was difficult, but pretending at a family dinner was a performance designed to expose every crack in your heart. My mother seated Ethan beside me at the long dining table, close enough that our elbows almost touched, while Derek Walsh sat across from us with a smile that had sharpened overnight. The Bennett dining room had always felt more like a museum than a place to eat, with oil paintings of serious ancestors, tall candles, polished silver, and a ceiling so high every word seemed to rise and return colder than before. I wore a navy sweater over a white shirt because it was the safest thing in my bag. Ethan wore the same black suit from the night before, his tie gone, his sleeves buttoned at the wrist, his expression calm enough to irritate every powerful person in the room. I could feel my father watching us over his wine glass, measuring the space between Ethan's chair and mine, measuring every breath, every glance, every possible mistake. Dinner began with salmon, roasted vegetables, and polite conversation that did not feel polite at all. Derek lifted his fork and looked at Ethan with easy amusement. "So, Ethan, tell us something only Noah's Alpha would know." My stomach dropped. Ethan set down his water glass. "That depends on what you consider meaningful." Derek smiled wider. "Let us start simple. Favorite flower?" I almost answered for him, but Ethan spoke first. "Sunflowers, not roses. Noah says roses feel like an apology someone bought at a gas station." My mother blinked. My ears warmed. I had said that once, 3 years ago, while walking past a flower stand in Brooklyn after a terrible job interview. Ethan had been carrying my portfolio because my wrist hurt. Derek's smile thinned. "Favorite dessert? Lemon tart, but only if it is not too sweet. He says most bakeries ruin lemon by being afraid of it." My father's gaze shifted to me. I stared down at my plate. Derek leaned back. "Allergies. Lilies," Ethan said immediately. His voice softened. "They give him headaches, but he never complains until the room starts spinning." My mother looked toward the white floral arrangement in the center of the table. A servant quietly removed it within seconds. Something inside me twisted. I remembered sophomore year of college, a campus fundraiser, a ballroom filled with lilies, Ethan driving me home because I insisted I was fine until I nearly fainted in the parking lot. Derek was no longer amused. "Fears, then?" Ethan paused. For the first time, he looked at me instead of Derek, as if asking permission without words. I should have looked away. I did not. "Glass elevators," he said quietly. "Not heights. Just the feeling of being seen from every side with nowhere to hide." The knife in my hand stilled. Nobody in that room knew that. Not my parents. Not Derek. I had told Ethan after a conference in Chicago, 30 floors above the street, when I had stepped out shaking and pretended the air conditioning was too cold. Ethan had taken the stairs down with me, all 30 flights, and never once made me feel foolish. Derek's jaw tightened. "You have an impressive memory for a friend." Ethan turned his head slowly. The warmth in his scent faded into something cooler, quieter, more controlled. "Noah is easy to remember when you have been paying attention." The table went silent. I looked at him then, really looked, and saw the problem with our little lie. Ethan was not learning his role. He had been living beside the truth for years, carefully, patiently, so close to it that I had mistaken devotion for habit. My father cleared his throat, but before he could speak, Derek reached across the table and touched the edge of my napkin, just close enough to make Ethan's eyes darken. "Then perhaps tomorrow," Derek said, "we should test whether this relationship survives more than trivia." Ethan smiled without warmth. "Test whatever you need." His hand found mine beneath the table, hidden by linen and candlelight, gentle but steady. I should have pulled away because of Rule 1. Instead, I held on, because for the first time in my life, someone at my family's table knew every quiet piece of me, and he had not used a single one as a weapon. The next afternoon, Derek chose the sunroom because it was the brightest room in the estate, and bright rooms made lies harder to hide. That was what he said, smiling as if he had invented honesty himself. My parents agreed to tea, which in the Bennett house meant porcelain cups, lemon slices, finger sandwiches, and a quiet public trial disguised as hospitality. Rain had stopped overnight, leaving the gardens washed clean beyond the tall windows, but the air inside felt heavy enough to press against my chest. Ethan sat beside me on the cream sofa, close but careful, his posture relaxed in a way I knew was deliberate. His hand was not touching mine today. I noticed that too much. Across from us, Derek stirred his tea without drinking it. "I have been thinking," he said. "Anyone can memorize favorite flowers and childhood fears. A loyal friend could do that." My mother looked down at her cup. My father did not. "Derek," I said, keeping my voice even, "you do not have the right to question every part of my life." "I am not questioning your life, Noah. I am questioning a story that appeared only after you were asked to honor an agreement." Ethan's scent cooled beside me, cedar after snowfall, controlled but unmistakable. "Careful," he said softly. Derek's eyes flicked to him. "Or what? You will claim him again with another dramatic sentence." My pulse jumped, but Ethan did not move. He did not raise his voice. That was what made him more unsettling than anger ever could. Noah is not a thing to claim. The room went silent, and for one breath, I forgot how to sit still. Derek leaned back, studying us like a puzzle he was tired of solving politely. Then he smiled. Fine. If you are not acting, prove it. My mother's head lifted. Derek, that is unnecessary. Is it? They have stood close, shared stories, and held hands under the table. Lovely details. But a real couple does not panic at one simple request. I knew what he meant before he said it, and my face went warm with dread. Ethan knew too. His hand, resting on his knee, curled once before relaxing. Derek looked directly at me. Kiss him. My father said nothing. My mother closed her eyes. The sunroom seemed to shrink around me until all I could hear was the thin click of the grandfather clock near the door. Ethan turned toward me, and everything else blurred. Noah, he said under his breath, too low for them to hear. Say no, and I will walk out with you right now. There was no pressure in his voice. No performance. No demand. He was giving me an exit in the middle of a room built to trap me. That was the moment my fear changed shape. I was not afraid Ethan would kiss me. I was afraid he would not want to. I looked at his mouth, then his eyes, and whispered, I am not saying no. Something passed over his face, quick and painful, like a truth he had no time to hide. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to turn away. I did not. His lips touched mine with a gentleness so careful it almost broke me. It was not showy. It was not hungry. It was a question asked in silence, and the answer rose through me before I could name it. My hand found the front of his shirt, not to perform for Derek, not to convince my parents, but because the ground inside me had shifted and Ethan was the only steady thing left. When he pulled back, his breath was uneven, and his eyes looked darker than before. The room stayed quiet. No one clapped. No one spoke. Derek's smile was gone. Ethan rested his forehead near mine for one brief second, almost too small to notice, then whispered, I am sorry. But he did not look sorry. He looked like a man who had finally touched the edge of something he had spent years refusing to want. After the sunroom fell silent, everyone pretended tea could continue as if the air had not changed permanently. Derek adjusted his cufflinks. My father asked a servant for fresh cups. My mother spoke about the garden roses, even though the roses had been cut back weeks ago. Ethan sat beside me, still close, still careful, but something between us had become too awake to fold neatly back into our little napkin contract. I could still feel the warmth of his mouth like a secret written across my skin, and I hated that my first thought was not shame. It was recognition. When the room finally released us, I escaped to the upstairs hallway under the excuse of needing a moment alone. My hands were trembling, so I pressed them against the cool banister and tried to breathe like a normal person, like a person who had not just learned that a fake kiss could feel more honest than every promise my family had ever made. Downstairs, voices drifted through the half-open door of my father's study. I meant to keep walking. I truly did. Then I heard Derek say my name. Noah is more unstable than expected, he said, calm and clinical, as if I were a market report. But the arrangement is still viable. My father answered in a low voice. The Parker boy complicates things. Only emotionally. Legally, he has no standing. Paper rustled. My mother said, this was supposed to be discreet. Derek gave a small laugh. Discretion is exactly why my family is paying generously. An Omega with Noah's scent profile is rare. Compatible, adaptable, and undocumented in the public registry. Once the private claim is processed, the Walsh Foundation controls access to his medical records, his suppressants, and any future certification. The hallway seemed to tilt. Scent profile. Private claim. Access. They were not discussing a marriage. They were discussing ownership dressed in legal language. My knees weakened, and I gripped the banister harder. My father sighed, not shocked, not horrified, only inconvenienced. We agreed Noah would be protected. He will be comfortable, Derek said. There is a difference. I stepped back, and the floor creaked. The study went quiet. Before I could run, a hand closed gently around mine. Ethan stood behind me, his face pale in the dim hallway light. He had heard enough. Maybe all of it. He guided me around the corner without a word, into the shadow near the library doors. I pulled my hand away, hurt arriving before sense could stop it. You knew? His silence answered before he did. I suspected. How long? He looked at the floor. Since your mother called me 3 weeks ago and asked whether you had ever registered a bonded preference. It felt wrong. I started looking. My chest tightened. And you did not tell me. I wanted proof. No, Ethan. You wanted control. The words hurt him. I saw it. But I could not stop. You stood beside me all weekend acting like my protector, but you were keeping secrets too. He lifted his eyes then, and the calm was gone. Not replaced by anger, but by something worse. Fear. Because every time someone tries to protect you, they make you feel smaller. I did not want to become another person deciding your life for you. My breath caught. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the folded napkin contract, worn now at the edges. I was going to tell you tonight. Everything. Then take you anywhere you wanted to go. Your choice. Not mine. I stared at the small white square in his hand, at our ridiculous rules, at his impossible added sentence beneath them. For the first time, I understood that Ethan had not come to play a role. He had come prepared to lose me the right way if that was what freedom required. Behind us, the study door opened. Derek's voice carried into the hall, smooth as polished glass. Noah, I think we should finish our conversation. Ethan stepped aside instead of in front of me. It was a small movement, but it changed everything. He was not blocking my path. He was giving it back to me. I walked back into the study because running would have let them keep calling me fragile. Ethan followed, but only to the doorway, close enough to be there and far enough to let every step belong to me. My father stood behind his desk with a folder open beneath his hand. My mother looked smaller than I had ever seen her, seated near the fireplace with her pearls pressed between nervous fingers. Derek stood by the window, calm, handsome, and certain, his reflection stretched tall against the dark glass like a man who had already written the ending. There you are, he said. We were worried. I looked at the folder on the desk. No, you were caught. My mother whispered my name, but I did not turn toward her. If I did, I might remember every birthday she had planned, every fever she had sat through, every soft thing that made betrayal harder to hold. Derek sighed as if disappointed in a student. You overheard complicated legal terms and misunderstood them. Then explain them simply. The room went quiet. My father closed the folder. Noah, this arrangement was designed to secure your future. My future or your reputation? His face tightened. For the first time, the great Arthur Bennett looked less like a judge and more like a man afraid of his own child speaking clearly. Derek stepped forward. Ethan moved too, not in front of me, just 1 inch closer. I felt it without looking. A choice waiting beside me. Derek noticed and smiled. This is touching, but temporary. He is your friend. He came because you begged him to perform. He will leave when the drama becomes inconvenient. The words should have embarrassed me. Instead, they opened something. I turned and looked at Ethan. His expression was steady, but his eyes were not. They carried all the things he had refused to say for years, all the moments I had mistaken for loyalty because love felt too dangerous to name. He gave me the smallest nod, and I understood. He would leave if I asked. He would stay if I chose. He would not make the choice for me. I faced Derek again. You are right about one thing, I said. I begged him to pretend. My mother closed her eyes. Derek's smile returned, triumphant and brief. I let him have that breath. Then I reached back, found Ethan's hand, and laced my fingers through his in full view of everyone. But I am the one who forgot to stop. Ethan went completely still beside me. The room seemed to lose all sound except the soft crackle of the fireplace and my own heartbeat, strong for once, not frantic. Noah, my father said, warning and pleading mixed together. No, I said. It was the first time that word had ever felt like a key instead of a crime. I am not signing anything. I am not marrying Derek. I am not giving anyone control over my medical records, my scent registration, my medication, or my life. If there are papers with my name on them, cancel them. If there are payments attached to me, return them. And if anyone here believes I am too emotional to decide for myself, then watch me walk out. Derek's face hardened, but his voice stayed smooth. You are making a mistake. Ethan's thumb brushed mine once, hidden strength in a public storm. I looked at Derek and felt nothing that resembled fear. Maybe, but it will be mine. I turned toward the doorway. Ethan did not pull me. He waited until I moved first, then matched my pace. We crossed the study, past my silent mother, past my father's unreadable face, and stepped into the hall where the house suddenly felt less like a cage and more like a place I was leaving behind. At the stairs, Ethan finally spoke, so quietly only I could hear. Are you sure? I looked down at our joined hands. No, I whispered. But I am free. His breath trembled. Then he smiled, small and broken and beautiful. That is enough. We left the Bennett estate through the front doors without coats, without luggage, without permission, and the cold November air hit my face like the first honest thing I had felt all weekend. The rain had returned, softer than before, misting over the stone steps and silvering the driveway beneath the porch lights. Behind us, the house remained bright and silent, every window watching like an accusation. Ethan walked beside me, not ahead, not behind, his hand still wrapped around mine as if he was afraid the world might change its mind and pull me back inside. His car was parked near the end of the circular drive, dark blue and covered in rain, and by the time we reached it, my sweater was damp and my hair was sticking to my forehead. Ethan opened the passenger door for me, then paused. Noah, he said, voice low. Tell me where you want to go. The question almost broke me. No one had asked me that all weekend. Maybe no one had asked me that my whole life. I looked past him toward the long private road leading away from the estate, 3 miles of trees and iron fencing before the outside world began again. Anywhere they are not, I whispered. Ethan nodded once, like that was a complete address, and helped me into the car. The heater came on with a soft hum. For several minutes, we drove in silence, the windshield wipers moving steadily, the estate shrinking behind us until it disappeared into black trees. I watched the rain slide over the glass and tried to understand the shape of my life now. I had no signed engagement, no family approval, no plan, no overnight bag, and my best friend sitting beside me with both hands tied on the wheel like restraint was the only thing keeping him together. I am sorry, I said. Ethan's jaw shifted. For what? For pulling you into my disaster. He gave a quiet laugh, but it had no humor in it. Noah, I walked in willingly. I turned toward him. Why? He did not answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket at the next red light and handed me the folded napkin contract. The edges were soft now, the ink slightly blurred from being carried too long. I unfolded it carefully. Our rules stared back at me, ridiculous and heartbreaking. No unnecessary touching. No confusing private lies. No jealousy. No scent marking. No falling in love. Beneath our signatures was the line he had added before, unless you asked me to stop pretending. But when I turned the napkin over, there was more. Smaller writing. Older, maybe written after I had fallen asleep in the guest room. I have loved you for 7 years. I can pretend for 3 days if that is all you can give me. My vision blurred so suddenly I could not read the last word twice. Ethan. The light changed, but he did not move for one breath. I was never going to say it, he whispered. Not if it made you feel trapped. I reached across the space between us and touched his wrist. He looked at me then, and all the years between us seemed to collapse into one quiet, shaking second. I do not feel trapped with you, I said. His breath caught. The car behind us honked, ordinary and impatient, and somehow that tiny normal sound made me laugh through tears. Ethan drove on, turning toward the city, toward his apartment, toward some life I had not imagined yet. I was still holding the napkin when his phone lit up in the cup holder. Unknown number. One message. Bring Noah back before midnight, or the private Omega registration file goes public. The warmth in the car vanished. Ethan pulled to the curb beneath a flickering street lamp and read the message once, then again. I expected fear to return. Instead, I felt something steadier rise beneath it. I folded the napkin and placed it over his phone. They still think I am alone, I said. Ethan looked at me, rainlight silver across his face. You are not. And as the clock on the dashboard changed to 9:17, I realized leaving the estate had not been the end of the story. It was only the first time I had chosen who would stand beside me when the real fight began.